Welcome everybody, it's Dr. A from History Surfer. I'm in the Bahamas in old stomping grounds. Hey, I'm in Nassau, we're in New Providence actually, and we're heading out to Clifton Heritage Park. So I just wanted you to see, if you rent a car, don't be surprised. It's pretty far out here. I will be walking around once we get there. All right, we arrived here. We're at Clifton Heritage Park. It's a beautiful spot out here on the other side of the island. Nowhere near where cruise ships or anything comes in. I would highly recommend anybody who wants to see the real Caribbean, the real Bahamas, to get away from the center of Nassau. Let's turn the camera. One of the big spots here in Nassau for preservation of heritage. This was a site that was originally, I'll turn the camera this way, inhabited by the Lucayans. And I don't know if you can see across the street. We'll go across there. Eventually, due to disease, they were decimated, the population. They were actually related to the Tainos who came into the Caribbean from South America. You can still see Taino people, but not up in this part of the Caribbean. I went to a Taino village in Dominica actually. But once we get the British coming in here and the pirates are removed by Woodes Rogers, there's going to be settlers coming in after the American Revolution that are called the Loyalists. And this is a product, these buildings that we're going to look at today, of plantation building here. A couple different plantation owners actually. So let me go in and pay. You have to pay the gift shop. I'll walk this way with you. It's over here. And then we'll walk through the park. Okay, this is the old carriage house, and it's in here that you come in to pay and everything. As you can see, this building was actually in very good condition, comparatively speaking. You're going to see what the great house, what's left of it. It doesn't look very good, but you can see also, let me go up close so you can see it, the construction method. They use a type of aggregate from limestone to put it together, and this is here from the this part is the early 19th century, excuse me, 1800s. The Loyalists actually left the Americas in about 1784. We start to see them departing after the Yorktown debacle for the British. I'm going to go across the street now, and you can see here where I'm heading. And a lot of them left from St. Augustine, Florida. They originally, many of them from South Carolina, the Georgia area, and they come here because they were promised land grants. They were hoping to replicate their experience in the American South. Good morning. But that didn't happen. And William Wiley and John Woods both owned this property at one point, and this is what's left of the great house. What they were trying to do was cotton plantations, and cotton did not succeed here. As you can see here, it's pretty overgrown. They weren't successful, as I was saying before. Sorry, I stopped. There's the back of the house. But it's because of the geography here, the geology, I should say. Cotton just doesn't grow well here. So it was a disaster. So if you look at, I don't know if you all can see this because it's kind of sun faded, but John Wood, the person I originally mentioned, he was the person who constructed this. And then when he left, this was eventually acquired by William Wiley. Okay. The great house would have looked something like that. There's a schematic of it. We'll walk to the slave quarters as well. Back to the idea of, you know, cotton and a plantation here. It's unsuccessful. Gosh, by the time we're into the, you know, by the time we see the end of slavery in the English world is 1834, they basically had declared it a disaster. John Wood ended up going back to the United States, and in fact, it's really funny. I found his house that he went and built in Georgia, in St. Mary's, Georgia. So if you're from that area, any of you watch or you go up there, it's called Orange House. I think so. But this is it, people. This is the big plantation experience in the Caribbean. And hopefully some of you make it out here. I highly recommend it. We're going to go over to the slave quarters. All right, we're walking to the slave village. You know, it is a surprising feature here at Clifton that we see the slave village is right across the street from the great house. It's a lot of times in the really big plantations, because you have to realize too, there's not a lot of slaves here because there's just no reason, you know, with the poor soil, and then they do have a bug infestation. It's going to collapse quite quickly, but still, it's interesting that they're so closely related to each other. And there's some paths down here. You can go down and look to the beach. It's a beautiful spot. If you want to come to a good beach, come out here to Clifton. I'll try to walk by one of those beaches. But the relationship between the lines between slave and master become blurred as you get further away from large cultural centers. I always look at Nassau, while it's not a big plantation island, the place where all of the different ideologies of the various people here came together. It created a social milieu that actually fosters this Bahamian, specific Bahamian identity. And so we'll walk out there and I'll show you what those look like. They're actually a pretty good example of slave architecture, which becomes the architecture of the people. My mother's, you know, the form of my mother's house where she was a child, it is this form. So we'll keep walking. On our way down to the slave quarters, the slave village, actually is a better way to say this, more current, is Banana Hole. If you look down here, I don't know if you can see it that well, just looking at the lighting. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is we have a lot of caves in the Bahamas. It's the limestone, the substructure, and how these things happen, because I've actually been in a really big one in Long Island, and they appear all over the place. My mother told stories. There's another hole. This actually, it looks like into the system of people falling into these holes and dying, and also of using the caves for shelter during hurricanes. Okay, we're out here in the slave village. There's a path back, and I was just walking on it. So you go behind the carriage house, and you can see examples of slave architecture. I don't think people realize the slaves were the builders too. You know, the great house is built in the same fashion. There's evidence of as many as 67 slaves out here at Clifton. And if you come out here, you know, just realize you can't like walk on this stuff. But here's one that they've done a recreation of. So this would have been an African technology with the way they do the roofs, when you have thatch, it's definitely African technology. And the design is very much with the idea of a Georgian aesthetic. Georgian architecture. Let me see if I can pull this door open so you can see in here. There's a little exhibit. I think it might be too dark, but let's go in anyway. Georgian architecture is, everything is very symmetrical. So the two doors facing each other would be common. So if I turn from here to here, commonly kitchens are outside. That's normal. In any, like my one aunt had her kitchen outside until the day she died, you know. So if you can see this map, we're out here by Lyford Key, and there's Clifton, and there's Lyford Key. It's an amazing area and resource. The cabins were close to each other, one following one after another, like this. You see in a row. The house is across the street and down a little bit, not far from here. And it's the same design on every one of them. Door in, door out. Symmetry. How many people could fit in there? My mother's family, she had 6 sisters. They didn't all live in the one house together because the difference in ages. Here you can see some of that roof work. And you can see it without the facing on it. It's a concrete aggregate rubble construction. And there you see the limestone. And it's not concrete. We call it like a concrete aggregate, but it's not. Inside here, you can see how the stonework fits together, and you can see the thatch work too. There's a lot of people who still have thatch roofs in the out islands, or as they call them now, the family islands. There's an example of an oven. Those things, they're like a beehive oven. They make great bread. It's unbelievable how good that stuff is. And if we look at the people who lived out here, you have to remember these are people brought here unwillingly. These people of African descent who came here and essentially make the Bahamas. It's one thing you realize when you look at the Bahamas and the Africanisms in Bahamian culture. The food, the architecture, it's all a product of their influence. We're almost at the end. We'll go all the way down. And here's another example of these early structures with the thatch roof. And that is, people, a real Bahamian shutter. That's what shutters look like, not the fancy things we think of in the US. The ones I have look nothing like that. But again, the simple room. Remember, you would have had multiple family members in here, cooking done outside. This is where you spent your rest hours. You probably would have had your own little garden. You can grow things here. They do a type of potash farming that holes in the soil, in the rock, they put soil in and they slash and burn, and they grow things like tomatoes, corn, pepper. I'm trying to think of all things I've purchased. Oh, and some islands grow pineapples. Like Eleuthera has a huge pineapple production. But we're going back. I'll see you when we get back to the carriage house. And look how close to the road we are. Oops. All right, we're gonna walk down to the beach so you can see one of the beaches here. There's some really nice beaches out here. Like I said, I would highly recommend coming out here and snorkeling. You can rent snorkel equipment here. If you look on their website, Clifton Heritage Park, you'll see that you can do that. But the water out here is spectacular. We're heading around to the south end of the island. We're out west here. This is you take the western road, and down the street from here, believe it or not, is a oil refinery, Clifton Pier. But it is beautiful here, and a lot of the dive boats come here because it is such a good spot. Look at this water. All right, with the advent of the 20th century, the modern period, Sir Harry Oakes, a big developer here, and also an infamous crime was committed when he was murdered. But in 1935, he purchased the property, and by the 90s, in the 1990s, they were going to make a big development out here. With activism by the local people, Clifton Heritage Park was created out of 200 acres. Today, it is the best example of Amerindian, African, and colonial settlement in the Bahamas. It's a wonderful place. Please don't miss it if you come. I would highly recommend it. The tour guide, Miss Vanita, is a wonderful person, and check it out. I'm gonna go look at one of the other beaches. I'll show you there, but I probably will not speak again. So peace out, everybody. Have a wonderful day.